This is Lutin, and I'm here guys to talk you through my first outing in DayZ Standalone. Now, I've never played the game before. I didn't have a PC at the time that Arma 2 DayZ mod was around, so I wasn't able to play that at the time, so I'm coming to this completely afresh. And also, I was really unsure about this as a game. I really was not sure if I wanted to get it or not. I knew several people that were going to get it, and through partly their convincing and also my own rationalisation, I have decided to pick up the title. And this is my first outing. There was a few things that I was kind of concerned about. One was crazy rampaging, murderers who would just shoot you as soon as they see you, or for example, just the crazies who will just, wait for you, put you down, whatever, and so on and so on. I was also worried about the severe lack of zombies because, as I said to someone this week on Twitter, I have seen so many videos of DayZ Standalone and almost none of them with any zombies in. So I was very pleased, as you can see here, that I was actually able to encounter some zombies. I was very worried because I'd seen videos about people bleeding out and stuff, and I'd seen this. And actually, when I first came into the game, I came into the game further down the road here, like kind of what would it be, south. And or maybe east even, it doesn't really matter, but anyway, I came in the dead of night, and it was absolutely a terrifying entrance to the game. I hadn't intended to record anything. I started recording when I got up to here because I kind of felt like, hey, this is a good point to actually sort of make something from. But when I came into the game, I had nothing. I just had my torch. Obviously that's always what you start with, but coming into that in the dead of night was absolutely terrifying. No idea where to go. No, I could hear things moving around, and that was absolutely freaking. I managed to find a town, but again, looking around with the torch, you're worried somebody's going to see you or something is going to see you. Eventually I came across another guy wandering around in the dark, which absolutely scared the crap out of me, and then even more, it was just weird and bizarre. Came into a barn and I found a guy slumped in the corner, just blood pouring out of him like a fountain. He'd obviously been injured really badly by something and was just dying a slow, horrible death. So that was curious. You can see me actually checking the road back here because this guy was following me for a little bit and I wanted to make sure he wasn't kind of following me too hard. So again, though, finding gear is a nightmare. That's one of the main priorities you obviously have to start with, is finding some gear so you can carry some more stuff. And I was very pleased here, you can see, find my first backpack. I also found this wrench around this town, which was really, really useful. The majority of the time so far I'd spent being obviously sort of searching, scavenging, trying to find stuff and avoiding any other people that I could. I have read a particularly good guide that I found on the Steam forum, so I'll link that below. It's a really excellent beginner's guide, and again, obviously me coming into this, I'm a total beginner. Although I have seen videos, it's a different thing. One thing I would say is that also you can see there are still some kind of alpha glitches. Remember as well, this game is in alpha stage, and it has disclaimers when you load it up saying, look, this is in alpha, there will be bugs, there will be things that will affect the enjoyment of your experience, and you just have to kind of go with that and roll with it. One of the other main things that I found quite frustrating was, not in this situation here, but in other places I found there were objects near to doors, and somehow that was causing like a conflict. It couldn't decide where that object was, so you couldn't pick it up. But again, this is an alpha, it's a development build, so there's loads of things going on here, and all of these will hopefully be fixed up as they go along. And obviously I know, for example, people will know that the original DayZ mod was particularly buggy and glitchy. It was all over the place. That was one of the reasons why I was kind of concerned about actually picking the title up, because it's kind of well known that DayZ is a horrific glitch fest, and I wasn't entirely sure about how stable they're going to make it after this point. I would say that, yeah, if you're an Arma player, it's much more easy to get your head around than if you're not an Arma player. My experience in Arma 3 definitely gave me a big heads up. Although I read some guides about kind of what to do and the kind of general premise of the game, I didn't really read any very specific guides about sort of what you do with certain items and things. And there's still some things that I'm not sure about whatsoever. So I kind of was learning things as I went along, but often the best way to learn things is to just get in and get on with it, and this is the thing, often you'll find people I see in games and things and they're asking, how do you do this? Or for example in comments on videos, and they're saying like, how do you do this? What's the best thing to do here? Well, often the best thing to do is to get in game and find out for yourself, rather than asking someone else, because what might be right for somebody else may not be right for you, your certain play style. So the best thing to do is to just get in, experiment, get on with it and see how you go. I think one of the best things that I read was actually from this guide though, and what the author said in the guide was, you need to approach DayZ with a certain mindset. and the mindset being that you will lose stuff, you will die. If you go into the, I mean, actually I was talking to one of my friends earlier about the game, and he was saying like, oh, I've got all this stuff, you know, it's Oleg who I play with, you've seen sometimes in other videos, and he was saying, I've got these guns, I've got this, I've got that, I hope I don't lose them. And that's the trouble, is like, if you get a lot of good stuff, you suddenly become quite kind of like, well, I've got this gear, I don't want to lose that gear, I want to keep hold of it, I want to keep the good stuff, because it takes you a long time. That's one thing that's quite interesting about games like this, is that when you spend a long time searching, when you actually find stuff, I mean, when I found my backpack and my axe, I was over the moon. I was like, oh my god, this is fantastic, because I've been playing up to this point for maybe, I don't know, an hour and a half, 2 hours, and been just searching around, wandering around. Every single room that you go into, it's kind of like broken crap, a bit of a shirt, you know, bad food, and when you actually find something of use, it's a real positive boon. You're like, oh my god, this is wonderful, because it, you know, it gives you so much, you know, more strength or options in the game itself. So that's a really positive thing. And then of course, once you have that, the fear of losing it becomes so much more. So I think again, that's kind of where DayZ comes in, and also in this guide he was saying about kind of how you want to approach the game. Some people are going to be like griefers, but they're kind of part of the game, these kind of, and you can kind of like, the way I approach these kind of games is you have to kind of approach them with your own imagination a little bit. You have to put a bit of yourself into it to get the most out of it. And I was just playing by myself in this round. Here we are, I'm about to leave the town. I've been scavenging around the town for ages and ages. I needed to, you know, get some hydration before I went out there, so I'm picking up some water here. I found a plastic bottle, which I was filling up. And again, as I say, I'm learning about the game as I go along, just from doing things myself. I was kind of confused a little with this water bottle, because I was thinking, okay, so what's this water bottle like? I don't know, 25, 50 mil, something like that. I don't know, you know, but I could only seem to fill it up. It said 6 mil left. So either I was doing something wrong there, or I just don't know. See, here we go. I click on the bottle and inspect, and it says reusable, blah, blah, blah. And so it's telling me about what it is. So it says 6 mil remaining. And I was kind of like, how can there be 6 mil remaining when I've just like filled it up? So I was trying to sort of fill this water bottle up. So this is the thing, from your very, very first, you know, fill bottle, and I look at it again, it says 6 mil. So I was kind of confused about that. I couldn't work out what was going on there. But again, bear in mind, I'm not entirely sure again whether this would be like an alpha issue, or whether it's just, you know, part of the game and it's something I don't understand. But that's part of getting a new game. You kind of have to try things out and understand them. And when you're doing things for the very, very first time and you have no one to advise you either, then you're just learning it out. So what am I going to do with this game itself? Well, basically, right now, as I say, I played this all on my own today. I just wanted to wander around and kind of get some kind of thoughts and experience. You can see that I wanted to go on a server. Some people, not too many people. So there's about sort of 12 and 1.15 people on this server. And I think that's the kind of good thing. If you're going to overpopulate a server, it's a bit much. Now, again, putting some armor stuff into this, you can see that basically what I'm doing is moving up this hill here. And I wanted to get off the road, because this was a direct road up from one of the towns where people were spawning in, and so there's definitely the possibility, when I went in that village there were all sort of rooms open, etc., where people had opened them. So people had been there, and I was very aware of the fact there was multiple zombies in the town there, so again, trying to keep an eye out. I was, you know, they hadn't been killed, so there was definitely the possibility of things being around, so I'm just kind of trying to scout and look around, you know. And very much like Armour with DayZ, there's a lot of kind of walking and looking. So if you enjoy games where there's a lot of walking and looking, then this is going to be the one for you. But as I say, it's kind of, you have to put your own sort of imagination into it, your own experience into it, because that's half of the game really, is sort of putting yourself in these positions of a kind of apocalypse survivor. You have to have this sort of mentality going into it in that way, because if you don't, and you're just trying to have some kind of crazy action time, that's very few and far between. A lot of the videos I see about DayZ tend to have those kind of snippets where they encounter a person and it's like crazy times, and that really will not be the way that I approach this game. It's not the kind of same mentality. I mean, I'd actually checked out a few of Frankie's videos this week as well of DayZ, and that's much more in the kind of vein of sort of how I approach a lot of the games, where it's kind of, you know, he's got a bit of a dialogue, a bit of a narrative going on there, and that's definitely the direction that I will move towards. You can see here's some crazy zombie guy coming for me from a mile away. I could hear him, but I couldn't see him, you know. That's often the first thing you hear. You hear like a crazy, like, and then you have to kind of get down on him. Here he comes in. Obviously with my fireman's axe, makes light work of them. They go down pretty easy now, so that's really nice indeed, rather than my wrench running round and round and smacking them in the head. But yeah, as I say, there's a couple of people that I probably want to get on board with this game, and obviously the next videos I do will probably be live com. But that brings me to the next point, which is that I haven't decided yet which channel this is going to go on. The slow pace of this game and also the kind of slightly more narrative style of this game lends me to kind of feel like I should put this onto my looting gaming channel rather than this channel. And so I'd be interested to hear on your opinion on that, guys, which channel you think that it should go towards, because I might post one of these, like, I don't know, once a week, every other week. I'm not entirely sure what kind of schedule I want to do these videos on for, because, again, sometimes you can play and not much will happen. But as I say, my looting gaming channel is much more about kind of gaming experience, playing with people, that kind of thing, narratives. If you've not seen it before, go check it out. It's in the link below. It's just, you know, my other channel, Looting Gaming. But as I say, I feel like... Oh, here we go. Found my mask. Got my US mask on. But yeah, I feel like this game may suit that channel a little bit more than this one, because this channel is a bit more about kind of tactical FPS stuff and so on. And obviously I do have some kind of standalone titles that come up now and again, but I think that this may be the kind of series that I want to put over there. But let me know in the comments below what you think, where this series should go, where you want to see it, and you know, I'll take that into consideration. So moving up on these guys. Now the zombies at this point in the game, I was very worried about them. I think, although the zombies go down quite easily, I think the danger of you actually getting bitten by them, you know, they're kind of like, if you actually get bitten, it's a very severe situation. So whilst right now, I seem to have taken them out quite easily. And also, like I said, I've seen so many videos where there were no zombies whatsoever, and I think that's to do with the fact that basically they don't respawn currently. So if a server has been fairly cleared, until that server is restarted, they won't appear again. So if you're running around on a server that's been running for 24 hours, 48 hours, there may not be that many zombies around. Some little Russian dolls in there. Ooh, we get a zombie calling in. This is what I mean, you sometimes hear the call of the zombie, and here she is, crazy lady. Go down. Down she goes, pretty easy. At this point I was starting to get a little bit more confident. I was quite freaked out for quite a while in this game, and then once I got a bit of gear, you suddenly get that kind of confidence. But again, I didn't encounter any other players, and I feel like if I had encountered other players at this kind of later period when I actually got some gear, they may have seen some of my gear maybe and dropped me immediately. But again, it depends again slightly on the server that you're playing on. I think some servers, depending on who's playing on them, you may have a better experience than others, much like with armor. Well, much like any game actually, you know, depending on what server you play and how it goes, you're going to have a different experience. But just this kind of one period of play, I learnt quite a lot from the game, and I feel in a much more kind of confident position going forward into it. When I first got into it, I really felt in deep water, but then just after a few hours playtime, felt much more confident to be able to kind of get in and just get on with it. So this was the next town I came into, and it was much more kind of dense urban environment, and again some zombies around. I was concerned that potentially might be some people around here, but I didn't encounter anyone. First port of call, of course, water. Now another thing about the water that I was unsure of, I did read that, you know, somebody said, you know, you shouldn't drink from lakes, you shouldn't drink from ponds. I was confused because this is like a well, a drinking fountain, but when you drink from it, it says you drink the water from the pond, which confused and worried me a little. I think if you drink bad water, it can make you ill. But I was thinking, well, this is the town water supply, so it shouldn't be. So again, I don't know whether, again, that's a slight alpha issue or whether it's just part of it. I found that as well in the game, I expected you to be able to open pretty much all cupboards and objects, but it seemed that there were a very limited amount of cupboards and objects that you could actually open. Some were kind of open, and so I assumed coming into the game that they had been opened and therefore you could open others. But actually it seems that it's kind of set, and that you can't really open these objects. But again, I don't know whether that's something that's going to change, but that was an interesting thing coming in there that I sort of expected and then it panned out differently. Similarly with doors, again, some people have said that they couldn't open doors at all. I read some things today, but it seems that some doors you can open, some you can't. And so again, that's a kind of curious thing. So after I'd looked around this town a bit, I did a fair bit of scavenging, decided to move out, heading up this way over the hill here. I was just trying to sort of search around. I was just really trying to get a feel for the game, trying to get a feel for the environment. But there is a hell of a lot of running in this game, and I was checking out, sort of looking at distance, again scouting and looking. And I can see this zombie here up on the hill. But But I think again, sort of moving forward into the game with starting to play with other people, there's going to be different roles that you can play. So, you know, if you do want to be someone that's going to help someone, a bit of a hero, you know, try and bring equipment to new people coming into the server, etc, etc, or are you going to be kind of like a bandit, just kill anybody on sight, steal their stuff? Or are you going to try and actually set up some kind of community, you know, start trying to control a town and so on and so on. It depends, there's loads of different things that you can do and how you want to get into it. But I think much of the story is driven by yourself, like I say, you know, you need to kind of almost have your own premise, your own narrative, and I think that's why the game appeals to me. I enjoy things like that where you kind of put a bit of yourself into the game, and I think a lot of games are like that, you know, a lot of games where after a long period of time it can get a little bit tired, and therefore if you can kind of introduce your own sort of things to do into the game, your own sort of thoughts, your own narrative into the game, then it sort of can rejuvenate it and you can get a lot more out of it. And titles like this, which are a little bit more sandbox-esque, and so they require almost you to put some of yourself into it. Same with like Arma 3. I mean, that game is very, people say, oh, it's kind of boring because it's too serious, but if you role play that a little and you sort of get into the role a little bit, it can actually be kind of more rewarding because it offers a different experience than you would get with other titles where it's kind of just point and click, run and gun shooting. Now here we are sort of breaking out of the tree line. Now again, I wanted to stick close to the tree line, didn't want to make myself too obvious, and again you can see right in the distance there a little target that is another zombie, and similarly over there on the right you see another zombie that I just aimed towards. In fact, perhaps, yeah, there it is, just the one. One thing that I found, again, coming from Arma, that in DayZ it really helps to have eagle eye sight. So if you can spot a guy from half a mile away, you're really going to be quids in. But I think going forward into the game, there's going to be a lot of changes, a lot of things coming up that they're going to put into the game that don't exist there now. For example, one thing people have been pointing out to me plenty is that there's going to be a lot more zombies. They're going to put loads more into the game, and that's obviously going to make things a hell of a lot more interesting. If you have a huge group to deal with that's too much for you, you're going to require teammates. And I think as well, when you start to add these other elements, that may counterbalance some of this kind of craziness that you see from people. For sure, there's probably still going to be people that are kind of mad in the game and kill you on sight, but I think when there's more things to do and other sort of goals to achieve, that's going to be diluted a little bit. I think often boredom fuels that kind of behaviour, and when there's more things to do, you'll probably see less of that, or at least more people that are going to cooperate and who won't tolerate that kind of crap. So if somebody comes onto a server and is behaving that way, you may have more people that kind of will team up with you to deal with that. Or I would hope so anyway, but maybe not. Apparently they're going to be introducing wild animals into the game as well. That would be great because that means you can actually kind of hunt them, and then in doing so you'll be able to sort of gather food that way and so on and so on. So introducing more levels of complexity is definitely going to be a really fantastic thing to put into the game. Another thing that's going to be coming along as well is vehicles. You're going to be able to sort of collect parts to repair vehicles and build them. Again, that would be fantastic. The idea that you can actually move around the map more quickly, and again, if you have a sort of group of people who are dealing strongly and controlling certain areas, certain towns and so on, then that's going to be beneficial. So it kind of gives you an incentive to team up and that idea of cooperation. I think with DayZ as well, although as I say I played this whole section just by myself, I can imagine from Arma that when you get a group of like 5 or 6 people together, that feeling of cooperation is really what kind of drives you in the game. With Arma, you know, you're often playing against AI, or nearly almost predominantly playing against AI, and again I've had a lot of people comment saying, well, isn't that quite boring? You would think so, wouldn't you? But actually what happens is you forget about that kind of competitiveness that you have when you're playing PvP in FPS. What actually happens is it becomes that element disappears, and it becomes more about how well can you cooperate with your teammates, which in many ways is perhaps a little bit more laudable. And it just is, it's a different experience, it's a different way of playing, it's a different mindset, and you can approach it to get something else out of it. And I think that's what kind of people really find and seek from these kind of things. I think as well with DayZ, the kind of fear factor of like when you die you lose all your stuff, it just, I couldn't hit this guy for love nor money, there he goes. That fear factor of losing all your stuff is quite an unusual trait. I mean, people who play things like EVE Online, for example, will be well aware of the frustrations of dying and losing all your crap. But again, similarly with DayZ. But that's actually a really fantastic thing, because again, often the fact that people can sort of die in games with little to no consequence often makes the games boring, it makes them tedious, and it makes you feel like you have no kind of real investment in the game. But when you actually have this fear factor of you die, you lose, that is a very scary feeling, and it kind of really affects your decisions in the game. It makes you think about how you want to approach certain situations, and again, it's just a different mindset to approach from. But I think, again, like DayZ, like Armour, it's not something that you can really jump in for 5 minutes. You need to have some time set aside to be able to really play the game properly. You need to sit down, you need to play for several hours. If you can't do that, it's not really going to be the kind of game that you will get on with. Anyway, so that's my first experience in DayZ today, guys. Hope you've enjoyed. Don't forget to drop a comment below about maybe how you've been finding DayZ, about certain experiences you've had, or also, as I say, which channel you think it should appear on. Should it appear here or over on Looting Gaming? And as I say, if you haven't checked out Looting Gaming, please do so. You may well enjoy it. I was just trying to find myself a safe spot to spawn in by, and also I wanted to get a little look around on this server here. I also thought it'd be kind of cool to just get up on top of this crane here and have a little look around. One thing I would say about the graphics are really nice. So far I haven't really had too many graphical glitches or anything like that. It looks very good, similarly to Armour 3 and of course Armour 2, and I was running this with kind of fairly standard settings, all on pretty much, I think it was high or very high, not going for the crazy full out settings, but it's all totally adequate and looks really nice. Anyway guys, so there we go. Hope you've enjoyed today. If you have, please drop me a little like, and I'll see you next time for a little bit more of DayZ Standalone.